wondered why the world seems so messed up? Crime, destruction, war, death, etc. everywhere you look. Well, the Bible discusses a being called Lucifer in both the Old and New Testaments. Other names for this creature are Satan and the devil. One of the first explanations of just who this being known as Lucifer is found in the Old Testament in a book written by the prophet Isaiah, who wrote around 740 BC. He wrote that Lucifer was created full of wisdom and was, quote, perfect. He was created the anointed cherub that covereth the throne of God, and that he actually was upon the holy mountain of God. He later corrupted this wisdom by reason of his brightness. The Bible then records that God cast him to the ground. Isaiah wrote this in Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? Lucifer shows up in the original site of human habitation on earth, called the Garden of Eden. Lucifer spoke through a serpent to Eve and said, Yea, hath God said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden. And the woman said unto the serpent, We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, God hath said, Ye shall not eat of it, lest ye die. And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die, for God doth know that the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. So, from the above information, it's possible to glean a little knowledge about the nature of Lucifer. First, he was cast down from heaven because he desired to ascend directly into the seat of heavenly power, the throne of God. Also, he is referred to as the son of the morning. This appears to be a reference to Lucifer being similar to the sun, which also rises every morning. Third, Lucifer can deceive the world because he has been transformed into an angel of light. And he does this so well. Finally, it says that Lucifer can work lying wonders. Again, very, very true. Now, with those basic understandings, folks, of Lucifer in place, it'll be possible to examine the views of others about this fallen entity. However, not all agree with the picture of Lucifer being evil. For Albert Pike, a high-ranking 33-degree Freemason and Masonic leader of his time, wrote this, quote, There is no rebellious demon of evil or principle of darkness and in eternal controversy with God, unquote. In fact, Mr. Pike believes that Lucifer was not a force of evil, but could be a force for good. And he wrote this in Morals and Dogma, his book, quote, For the initiates, now these are those who are initiated into the true secrets of Masonry. For the initiates, this is not a person, but a force created for good, but which may serve the devil. To further amplify that belief of Mr. Pike's, it becomes important to quote a letter that he wrote in July of 1889 to the 23 Supreme Councils of the world. Judging from the contents of this letter, it appears that Mr. Pike was attempting to tell the leaders of the various Supreme Councils all over the world that they were to know that Lucifer was the secret god of the Masons. This letter clearly indicates that he believed the position that Lucifer was a god who had come to earth for the good of mankind. And he wrote this, quote, That which we must say to the crowd, and presumably Mr. Pike meant that the crowd was all of the non-Masons, or the profane, as they call us. That which we must say to the crowd is, we worship a God, but it is the God that one adores without superstition. End quote. So it appears that the purpose of this letter was to advise all of the top-ranking Masons that they were to concoct a story that the Masons worshiped the traditional God, so that none could ever accuse them of worshiping a cherub, a non-God by the name of Lucifer. In other words, they were to deny that Lucifer was their God whenever an outsider was smart enough to break through all of the secrets and figure it out. Well, of course, folks, they were sworn to secrecy. They would have to deny anything about the true secrets of their order. You must understand that when you ask a Mason a question about Freemasonry, he's going to tell you a lie because he is sworn to secrecy. And he is sworn by blood oaths, and I know that. And I also know that by the time they reach the 32nd degree, they've taken at least 32 different oaths swearing them to secrecy, minimum. So we already know this. And I and many others, we've figured this out. And you will too. So the secret inside the Masonic order is that Lucifer is their secret God. Any non-Mason today who attempts to explain any of their Masonic friends or relatives that this is the secret inside the lodge will be met with an instantaneous denial. Every Mason, whether they know the secret of the lodge or not, will obviously deny the accusation, because they must. You see, Albert Pike at the time was at the head of all the lodges of Freemasonry of the world, and at the head of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry in the United States of America. It is many a researcher's contention that a small percentage of the Masons know that all of the symbols inside the lodge refer to Lucifer. And I am one of those who believe this, folks. My direct experience in the rituals has shown it to be absolutely true, and I can prove it. And I've already given you direct eyewitness accounts from many rituals that I've directly participated in. I'll also point out that not one of the fellow Masons that I came in contact with over the, say, 8 or 9 years that I was involved, never once, not one of them ever even alluded to the fact that Satan was the true object of worship. Most didn't know. They had no idea. The best way to describe this is that it is an indoctrination. Like a soldier going through boot camp who learns to simply follow orders from his direct supervisor, not knowing anything of the overall plan, not understanding what his orders at the time have to do with the larger overall plan. Compartmentalization. And if you've done any research on those who control things in this world today, you'll understand how compartmentalization is key to keeping secrets, like the military intelligence services do. So compartmentalized that nobody has the full picture until one gains a certain position within the organization. It is only when one steps back and looks at it all from a 40,000-foot view and sheds off his or her indoctrination, sheds off their blind trust, that they can more clearly see what it is that's going on. And I'll attribute that explanation to how I was able to eventually see it. Most members, maybe all members of some lodges, most likely have no idea what it is they're doing and what it is they're worshiping. It is my contention that there is ample evidence from other sources, including from Masons other than Mr. Pike, that the secret God inside the Masonic lodges is Lucifer. And that evidence is available to anyone who cares to locate it, folks. But there's another Mason who knows that Lucifer is the good God of a particular segment of the Masons. Pike's fellow 33-degree Mason Manley P Hall also felt that this God was a good God. He wrote in his book entitled The Secret Teachings of All Ages, quote, "Sun worship played an important part in nearly all the early pagan mysteries." And this is covered extensively in the presentation entitled Sun Worship on this channel. Continuing, the solar deity was slain by wicked ruffians who personified the evil principles of the universe. And he's speaking of jealousy. By means of certain rituals and ceremonies, symbolic of purification and regeneration, this wonderful God of good was brought back to life and became the savior of his people. This is their words, not mine, folks. And I'd also like to point out, dear listeners, that I've met these ruffians. Jubela, Jubilo, and Jubilum. They appear during the Master Mason degree, and they kill the initiate, when the initiate will not divulge to them the secrets of Masonry, the secrets of King Solomon. It's simply a dramatization of the death or killing of Master Mason Hiram Abiff, the widow's son, who himself is simply a symbol of Osiris, the sun, with a U, of ancient Babylonian texts. According to them, this God who came back to life is not the Jesus of the Bible, because Mr. Hall refers to him as, quote, the solar deity. He is referring to the death and resurrection of Osiris, covered in detail in the Masonic rituals. And I've already somewhat relayed to you who Osiris really is. Please watch some of the Mystery Babylon series on this channel. But Manley P Hall has further identified Lucifer as the god of some of his fellow Masons. He has written this in his book entitled The Lost Keys of Freemasonry. Quote, "When the Mason learns the key to the warrior of the block is the proper application of the dynamo of the living power, he has learned the mystery of his craft. The seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands, and before he may step onward and upward, he must prove his ability to properly apply energy." Folks, this stuff is much deeper than just paying homage to a deity. Did you catch what Hall said? Quote, "He must prove his ability to properly apply energy," end quote. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is what this is all about. Energy, magic, and domination. And we will get into that a little bit more in a bit. Socialists recognize each other by the words, "In the name of the one to whom the great wrong has been done." Satan, folks, is the eternal rebel, or one could say renegade. And you'll know that renegade was Obama's Secret Service code name. They believe him to be the first free thinker and the emancipator of worlds. He makes men ashamed of his bestial ignorance and obedience. He emancipates him, stamps upon his brow the seal of liberty and humanity, in urging him to disobey and eat of the fruit of knowledge. You see, socialists and the mystery religion of Babylon are the same, and in his book, A. Ralph Epperson has proven it. That thought that Lucifer was a good spirit to whom a great wrong has been done is the basic thought that holds this religion together, said Epperson. Remember, they believe that with the gift of intellect, man will develop technology that will make him God. They're working feverishly in laboratories now to uncover the secret of immortal life. And I'm going out on a limb here, and I will say that this is where this thing known as adrenochrome comes into play. The real kind, fresh from the heart of some traumatized child, or a synthesized version from a lab. When studying these people and their secret societies, we must understand their power and position. We must understand that these are the ones in power in this world. Not every single leader or person in a position of power is in the cult, but many are. The ones that aren't are instead controlled by these cult members, and thus they are useful idiots, doing the bidding for their masters. I'd point out here the Bushes and John Kerry all being members of the Skull and Bones cult. And one must understand here also that all of these sun-worshipping, Satan-worshipping cults are the same, just different names and some differences in their rituals. Where it's the people who are in these secret societies who are perpetuating this. It's all of these people who belong to Freemasonry and the ancient Order of the Rose and Cross and the Knights Templar and the Sovereign and Military Order of the Knights of Malta and the Order of St. John of Jerusalem and many more. And just as Satan tempted mankind with the ability to know good and evil themselves, just like God, without his assistance, now the Masons are teaching that they too could become a god through an initiation into the ancient mysteries. Let's talk a little bit about Luciferianism today. Reading from Wikipedia. Though associated with Satanism, a philosophy based on the Christian interpretation of the fallen angel, Luciferianism differs in that it does not revere merely the devil figure or Satan, but the broader figure of Satan or Lucifer, an entity representing various interpretations of the morning star, as understood by ancient cultures such as the Greeks and the Egyptians. In this context, Lucifer is a symbol of enlightenment, independence, and human progression, and is often used interchangeably with similar figures from ancient beliefs, such as the Greek Titan Prometheus or the Jewish Talmudic figure Lilith. And I'd like to point out here that Lilith is known for drinking human blood, and usually children's blood. Again, another reference to adrenochrome, in my opinion. The basis of Luciferian philosophy cultivates and encourages individuality, self-determined choices based on strategic application, and continually seeking to enhance the will via overcoming challenges. Luciferianism is philosophically practiced with the continual cycle and process known as liberation, illumination, and apotheosis, meaning from man to God. The ability to recognize both good and evil, to accept that all actions have both positive and negative consequences, and to actively influence one's environment is a key factor. Is anyone starting to see this dogma oozing out into our current world? I am. Continuing. Lucifer is not a defined religion, but rather a belief system that admires and venerates the characteristics and personality traits exhibited by Lucifer as presented in the literature and the various books of the Hebrew Bible. The following list enumerates some of the principles by which Luciferians strive to live. Some items on this list were initially put forward by an organization called the Order of the Luciferian Sword. The first principle says that an illuminated being who chooses rather than idolizes. And this means that Luciferianism is about the seeking of knowledge from both within and without. Illuminated, huh? You've heard this numerous times if you've been following this channel. Luciferians believe that taboos and social expectations should not hamper one from achieving his or her goals. Society and your fellow humans may take issues with your choices, and you are expected to accept the consequences with stoicism if you make poor decisions. So this principle begins to strip you of any ethical or moral or societal norms, and instead instructs one to attempt to attain your goals no matter these norms. This means that the ends always justify the means, folks. And again, if you've followed this channel, you've heard this many times. Another Luciferian principle is the pursuit of wealth and living in prosperity. For Luciferians, wealth is not something to be ashamed of. You are encouraged to strive for success and enjoy the fruits of your labors. You are allowed and even encouraged to take pride in your accomplishments and to highlight them. Yes, dear listeners, brag, flaunt, and be proud of the root of all evil, as they call it, money. This also helps to draw more unwitting people into your dogma without them even knowing. Do you remember JFK's secret society speech where he says that the secret society controls using covert means?
Opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed.
Monolithic is defined as characterized by massiveness, total uniformity, rigidity, invulnerability. Sound familiar? And when you throw a Luciferian dogma at the head of this snake, you've got yourself a really, really big problem to deal with, folks. Luciferians accept and delight in the so-called pleasures of the flesh. Cruelty has its place when it is warranted. The Luciferian may be cruel and wrathful to those who have proven themselves worthy of being treated in such a way. Luciferianism holds that the behavior of others dictates how you should treat them. There is no burden to treat others better than they deserve. So it's not do unto others as you'd have done unto you. It's do unto others as they've done to you, or simply put, ladies and gentlemen, revenge or vengefulness is okay. Another principle says to focus on the present day. And Luciferians do not believe in the Abrahamic religion's doctrine of an afterlife that is paid for by suffering in the present life. Instead, it is believed that one should live for the present day and make the most of what is here and now. Happiness today is proof that good choices have been made, and there is no expectation that suffering today is necessary for happiness tomorrow. And I would simply call this principle, do whatever makes you feel good. Again, another very dangerous principle to have in a modern world. If these types of people aren't in charge, then how could any of us ever expect peace on earth? We couldn't. We can't. Another principle, enlightenment is the ultimate goal. All knowledge is good, you see. Ignorance, however, leads to all sorts of problems. Hatred, lack of success, the inability to advance, etc. Unlike other belief systems in which faith plays a primary role, Luciferians celebrate knowledge of all types as the key to enlightenment and happiness in this life. Are they entrenched into our government? And if so, how badly? Well, we've seen some of them rise to the highest possible positions in America, the president, and more than once. In fact, I'll quickly name the ones that a simple internet search for public records provides. The following is a list of presidents who are Freemasons documented through public and historical records. George Washington, James Monroe, Andrew Jackson, James Polk, James Buchanan, Andrew Johnson, James A. Garfield, Theodore Roosevelt, William Taft, Warren Harding, Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, Gerald Ford. In addition to the individuals listed, Lyndon B. Johnson was initiated into the first degree of Freemasonry, which is the entered apprentice degree, on October 30th, 1937 in Johnson City, Lodge number 561, but did not advance any further and did not become a full member of his lodge. Ronald Reagan, he was made an honorary Freemason, and as a youth, Bill Clinton was a member of the Order of D. Malay, which is a Freemason order for children. Also, there is historical evidence suggesting that Thomas Jefferson was a Freemason. However, there is no record of him becoming initiated into any lodge, nor are there any references to Masonic membership in his personal papers. Then there is the two skull and bonesmen, the Bushes, and when and if we are ever able to get the full story on Barack Obama, I suspect we may find a Rosh Hashanah or a Hashashin or assassin connection, and I'd put money on it. But ladies and gentlemen, they're all the same goals, same objects of worship, just different names. And all you've got to do is open your eyes and take a look for yourself. Look at the world you're living in. Look around and ask yourself some questions, folks, to understand things, to make sense of things. First, we must know this. Satan's number one goal is to separate a person from God so that he will be ultimately destroyed. The reason for this obvious hatred for mankind is found in Genesis 1:27. Quote, "So God created man in his own image. In the image and likeness of God he created him. Male and female he created them." End quote. Since the devil hates God so intensely, it is natural that this hatred would be extended to mankind, who is created in the image of God, resulting in man becoming the object of Satan's attacks and torments. Since he cannot attack God directly, he attacks his creation instead. Every one of us gravitates towards sin. Satan cannot force sin upon us, but he works cunningly to get us to yield to it. He does this by temptation, enticement, and deception. Sound familiar? Covet means, as the patriot JFK said. Just turn on your TV, ladies and gentlemen, and see those commercials or those movies, quote unquote, showing you how to act or live or what to want. Just take a drive in your hometown and notice the neon lights denoting a name or product, or the billboards high in the air for all to see, tempting you to try this or try that, and usually with a nice little slogan or some bells and whistles to grab your mind and get your attention. A spell, one could say. Yes, folks, temptation and enticement. Ask yourself why the powers in charge are telling you that it's okay to kill a child that's just been born. Governor Northam from Virginia said this about full-term abortion.
So in this particular example, if a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother. So I think this was really blown out of proportion.
This is infanticide, ladies and gentlemen. This can be documented to have taken place in all past civilizations dating back to Neolithic era. And this time frame, folks, is the time frame of the founding and rise of the mystery schools and the Brotherhood of the Snake. Those whom we know are still in control of our world today. The authorities who wrote the official records for us most likely are agents of these mystery schools, and they'll have us believe that this was all done to control population. quote from Wiki. Many Neolithic groups routinely resorted to infanticide in order to control their numbers so that their lands could support them. And maybe it is, but let me ask you out there, could any of you kill your child to quell your civilization's population for the greater good? Could you be an official who was in charge of disposing of these innocent, helpless human beings? I can't imagine so. They think we're stupid, ladies and gentlemen, and unfortunately, they are spot on. And we can connect this ancient line of thought to many of our controllers today, like Bill Gates and his family, who have long advocated for population control, along with many other establishment elites and the Democratic Party, who launder millions to and from Planned Parenthood. Whatever the reasons for infanticide, one thing is certain: this is a defiling of humanity. To kill an innocent newborn child, nothing is more precious on this earth. And he, and you know who I'm speaking of, he has millions of us voting for this, accepting this, being okay with this. Ask yourself why the controllers are allowing a preteen to determine what gender they want to be, and to have surgery to change their body. Given your gender at birth from your creator, but if you don't like it, you can change it. And you can make this decision yourself before the law says that you are responsible enough to buy or use tobacco, before the law claims that you are responsible enough to vote for your political leaders, even before the law claims that you are responsible enough to fight in a war for your country. You aren't mentally equipped to handle any of those things, but you are able to decide to switch your gender? I can't think of any worse of an inversion of humanity than to surgically change a man to a woman or a woman to a man. Just turn on your propaganda box and see all these Luciferian principles on full display, folks. Violence, killing, coveting, sex everywhere, money, normalizing it all. Ladies and gentlemen, even the very system that rules our almost every action in life, the monetary Federal Reserve hoax system, is satanic. There's a certain amount of money in circulation at any given time, and for me to get more of that means that someone else will have to get less. It's a flawed system. And we see those who have accumulated vast amounts of this wealth glorified in our culture. We hear the stories of the cutthroat business person who amasses wealth, and many of us are trained to strive to be this person, to amass this wealth ourselves, no matter who gets hurt along the way, because this is the way that it is. And the ends justify the means, folks. Do a search on the wars and conflicts from around the world over the last 100 years or longer. Always fighting and killing one another. The reasons are given to us by our politicians, newskeepers, history books, etc. But I have a feeling that they're lying to us, folks. I have a feeling that all these conflicts aren't exactly what they tell us that they were. I have suspicions that these people have orchestrated these things by poking both sides and provoking them into all-out war with each other. Fighting, killing, and justifying it all. Normalizing it all to our children. Ladies and gentlemen, just open your eyes and look. Throw aside your indoctrination into accepting this stuff that you're seeing, and remember the time you saw this stuff before your programming set in. And remember how you thought that what you were seeing wasn't right. It was odd, off, confusing. This is because it is all of those things. Those things have no place in a modern society. Now, knowing what you know, knowing that there is a monolithic secret society at work, as pointed out by JFK, and knowing who they are, if you've watched the videos on this channel, And if you haven't, I suggest you do. And understanding that they are in control of all of Hollywood, business, government, religion, culture, history, and education, then it all makes sense. These things that seem to make zero sense now makes perfect sense. Inversion, all by design. Does our educational system educate? Does our government govern us in our best interests as it's supposed to? Does Hollywood correctly portray the way people act and do things? Do our history books tell the true story of who we are and where we came from? Are the heroes from our history books actually heroes? Are the villains in our history books actually villains? Or are we just getting the story from those who are in control? Does our law enforcement agencies really enforce the law as this presentation is being created? We see what happened to the great General Mike Flynn and his setup by our law enforcement organizations. Knowing what we know, do our religions tell us the truth? Who or what are we even worshiping in some of these churches? Yes, dear listeners, when looking at things this way, now it all seems to make much more sense. If you enjoyed this presentation, please like, share, and subscribe. And thank you. And I'll leave you with this quote from Woodrow Wilson.